lean backwards like this. Had-
It sounded like you
like,
just turned down the record speed.
Yeah.
We need it up 45 RPM.
right.
All
Well,
right. I'm glad to have
welcome
everyone here.
everybody.
And I'm glad that moderation is in Edwin's capable hands. Take it away,
Well,
Ed.
Steve, I'm delighted to be here. Hello, everybody. My name is Edwin Hoffman, and I am the creator and host of a radio program called Speaking of Art, which airs out of Ann Arbor and broadcasts throughout southeastern Michigan, including Detroit. Uh, and the purpose of creating that show was to present the arts in a way with fabulous guests, whether through the plastic arts or the performing arts, film, whatever, dance, but where the story was relevant to my listeners. Because I've always believed that, you know, you can go to a museum, you can see art on the walls, you can go to a performance, but what happens after it's over? I think it's the effect that it has on the spectators. What I try to do with that show, I guess, if I had to pinpoint it, would be I want my guests to be able to inspire my listeners, because the important thing is the story they take away and the ripple effect of what that meant to my listeners as they communicate to family, friends, and wherever. I think that the spectator is very much a part of the artistic process. My listeners know that I often have people on that you would not necessarily, identify as being artists, but I have a different take on that whole thing. I think when someone is engaged in something they're passionate about, and it is an endeavor that uses all their creativity, all their ability to forge connections with others and to get a message out, I consider that art. And I can't think of a better example than our guest today, Fiona Tanner, of Gorilla Highlands Coffee and the Noble Gorilla Foundation, to be really our guest today to talk about, I think, one of the most inspirational stories that I've heard in a long time. Now, I have to tell you, I met Fiona through Steve Pierce, my good friend here in Ann Arbor. A wonderful fellow Rotarian. I've known Steve pretty much a Rotary through Steve. And I know Steve not only to be an absolutely consummate on world markets, but on the arts. He's a fantastic tenor. And what a wonderful person, really, to be able to be kind of the fulcrum of our meeting today. So I am, as I said, Steve's friend Fiona, and Fiona will talk a little bit about that. And I think Steve, actually, I'm going to hand it over to him because the story of how they met, I think, is very interesting. But Fiona and her husband, John E. Quinlan, a fabulous entrepreneur who wrote a very self-scathing memoir called Taubata, The Quest and Memoir of a Vulnerable Man, which is available through MCP Books. Also, you can buy it online. Uh, I think that just about every paragraph of that book was something that I could relate to. So I was sort of following that journey that led to first Papua New Guinea and coffee growing there, and then bringing that operation to Uganda, to the African highlands where the fabulous mountain gorillas live. So we're talking about, everybody, I guess, many things here. We're talking about inspiration. We're talking about organized passion and creativity and creating something concern, a syndicate really of different coffee farmers up in these highlands, about 45, 100 feet up, where the coffee is grown. And Fiona really can explain that to us. But
Yes.
what it takes to not only create coffee, but to create a sustainable environment for it. And finally, realizing that there is an incredible opportunity here, not only to produce coffee, not only to protect the mountain gorilla, but also to increase the biology of that whole area of Africa that can make it going all the way through into the future for future generations. And first of all, though, I want to hand it over to Steve, under whose auspices we're all able to meet today. So again, welcome everybody. Welcome to our listeners. Steve, thank you very much for this opportunity. Steve Pierce.
I'm grateful that I have friends like you, Ed, and like Fiona, made my life interesting. I had a rebirth in my life, 2015, some things that happened, and I was like thrust out into, I don't know if I want to say never, never land, but I shot out like a cannon and I had to recreate my life. And I was going a million miles per hour. And what happened a year after that is my son died tragically and accidentally on election day in 2016 when he's trying to get a picture for social media. So I was already going a million miles per hour. And then that happened. I just tucked that under my wing. And my attorney and my brother-in-law invited me to the basement of the chop house, which for me is such a nice and comfortable place, a good place for, well, I feel like a real man when I'm there. Cigars and whiskey and meat. It's just a great place to be. It kind of seeps in through your skin too. You can't help but feel warm all over when you're there. So Fiona came over to the Harbaugh, Jersey, where I was seated with my brother-in-law and attorney. And she said, I don't even know who this is. And I noticed an accent right away. And so I asked her where she was from, and she asked us to guess. So it became a guessing game, and we all guessed wrong. And finally, she told us. She told us that they were in town. John was with her to do the AV, or the digital version of the memoirs that he wrote. Taubata, The Quest and Memoir of a Vulnerable Man. So I said that I had experience with vulnerability lately, but didn't want to dump it on Fiona right away. But then it came up later in the conversation that my son had passed away. And that led to me speaking at the book launch in Grosse Pointe, which was a great honor for me. I read the book. I was just fascinated by the turn that, I don't know if I would say the turn or the pivot that John's life took. We had some of that in common. He built a new life from the ashes, met Fiona. All of a sudden they're in New Guinea, redoing the coffee business for farmers in Fiona's native New Guinea, so that the farmers and communities would benefit. So I thought, isn't that fantastic? And just recently I started getting emails from Fiona and was made aware that they were doing the same thing again in Uganda. And I contacted Fiona and asked her if I could get involved. And she said, yes, I could. And just all, I don't, it was like, I don't know, throwing gasoline on a fire. I was very excited about it. And here I am today with her and with you, Ed, talking about it. And I'm able to get coffee to people. I'm able to promote the cause of the gorillas. I have QR codes that I'm going to share on my screen if I can do it successfully, so that people can just point their phone to those QR codes and they can be transported to where they need to go. Either that's donating right to the foundation or buying coffee, and a portion of proceeds of that coffee go to the foundation. So I've known Ed for, I don't know, at least 12 years, maybe longer. And he is a real fixture in Ann Arbor, and he's got great content.
Yeah, I think a little bit longer.
So I'd like to hand it back to Ed.
Well, Steve, you're very kind. It's been a huge pleasure. I mean, I think two of the best things I ever did when I moved to Ann Arbor, the first thing I did after buying groceries was to go to a bookstore called the West Side Bookshop, where I met wonderful people. The next thing was I met you at a Panera, and we became friends actually through somebody else, a friend of yours named John. Whatever it was, I think it's very germane to what we're talking about today, because I don't think you and Fiona, and possibly me also, that these are stories of transitions and change. And Fiona, your husband, John Quinlan, he quotes Heraclitus in his book, and he says, nothing is permanent but change.
Yeah.
And we often fear change. It's kind of like the old study they did when people take up skydiving. It's like, take a look at them as they go a month before, they feel pretty good about it. Then check in with them a week before they go up on that plane for the first time and jump out. They're practically a nervous wreck. And when they're on the plane going up, they're practically having a heart attack. But then push them out the door and immediately They know that they're there and they're happy about it. They can't wait to get back up again. But we fear change. But your story and John's story and Gorilla Highlands Coffee and Noble Gorilla would not have happened if it had not been for a mentality that embraces change. Not necessarily absolutely sure everything is going to work out. It's going to be a challenge, but it seems that to get where you are, and I think also where Steve is, and maybe our listeners too, that you have to embrace that change because it takes you to extraordinary places. And just as a corollary of that, I just want to say your husband was an entrepreneur, very, very successful. His own company on Wall Street, he was the CEO of that. He had learned how, say, a business was run in the 70s and 80s. From his journey in Taubata, in his memoir, in your own experiences, those rules didn't apply. Kind of
Yeah.
like the Wall Street adage, the rules changed. However, they are very relevant rules that you developed, and that you developed that through change. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because you're both very successful with your coffee company, but my God, you produce so many synergies with others, which is taking it into a whole new realm of what we would consider successful. What were the new rules of the change that you bring into this endeavor?
Ed, thank you, and Steve as well, and also Karen and other listeners that are there. Wow, so much that you touch on, has to do with connections, connections with people, connections of stories, and being open. I think the themes of vulnerability and being open to change are really what we need to embrace more of, because it opens up the universe to say, what are the possibilities and what can I explore safely and go and do without fear of
Hmm.
judgment or without fear of failure? And you touched on an interesting point with John and his book, because that's actually the beginning of how all of these stories come together, which is quite fascinating. I mean, apart from meeting, of course, in Colorado, but
Yeah.
the way that John's experience and his master's degree in organization development is founded on principles of organization. Going to Papua New Guinea opened him up to chaos, basically, where so many things were supposed to work one way and they never did. And yet having the mindset
Right.
is to say, we'll still stick with it, because
It's,
there would be times there where we just look at each other and say, my God, but it should have been this way. It's completely 180 degrees different. And you find your way through it. And I think that's a lesson in life that we all need to kind of embrace and just say, it's okay when it doesn't work perfectly. It's okay. And I think that vulnerability is a big part also of man's journey. And that's why, Steve, it was so incredible that evening and in the chop house when we got together. And, I play my little guessing games because I know my accent is a bit different. So when I ask people, where do you think I'm from? And they'll guess this and that in South Africa and, maybe down in Venezuela or whatever. And I say Papua New Guinea. And they absolutely lose it. It's
okay.
like, and John said in the book, Papua what? And it's Papua New Guinea. So
That's right.
it's kind of fun. But back to your question, how did those changes, or how did we relate and get into making it work in Papua New Guinea? Is that kind of
Yes.
what you want to share?
What you came from there. I mean, but it's still it had its great surprises. So in a way, you were able to sort of like with John, you sort of like were able to guide him because you came from there. But there were a lot of surprises and things along the way, and I'm just wondering how that journey prepared you to be able to launch Gorilla Highlands in Africa.
Okay, well, the thing is, I didn't launch Gorilla Highlands Coffee in Africa so our readers or our viewers get some clarity. It led me to collaborate with Gorilla Highlands Coffee, and therein is a big
With them,
difference,
right?
because I just want to sort of set the record straight there in case there's any issue on that. Part of my passion is to be involved with coffee because I am I love conservation more than anything else. I love creation and I love being in nature. And I think partly that's growing on up, like many of us have done, growing on up in nature and in wilderness. Your heart keeps yearning to see a more perfect creation. So
Yes.
when I see that there's things like destructive practices, mining, logging, and monoculture that happens in so many beautiful habitats and countries, and generally people around those habitats don't want that destructive habitat, or sorry, that destructive habit. They prefer something that's more in nature and in harmony with what they live in. So that led
Yes.
me to coffee. It was the conservation, where that area in Papua New Guinea is the home of the endangered birdwing butterfly. And
Hmm.
that's the largest birdwing butterfly in the world, 12-inch wingspan, very beautiful. And if you cut down all of their vines and their habitats, then there's only
Yes.
something like maybe 100-mile corridor that they live in and breed in. So it
Right.
was like,
Right.
wow. And these people, were being pressured in the plateau to resort to mining and logging. They didn't want that. So they were blessed to have been introduced to coffee back in the 60s, yet they were getting no benefits at all from their coffee whatsoever, because they were at the end of the line. They were in a very remote area, no power, no water, and absolutely no way of getting their coffee to market. So we decided, after talking with the elders and the women and people within that community, they
Yes.
were sort of saying, we know that we've done projects that have been funded from conservation, but conservation alone doesn't do it. And funding
Right.
from donors doesn't do it. We want to have more control of our own destiny, and we can do that with coffee, which I think is
Yes.
exactly right. So
I
we worked,
beautifully said.
thank you. So then
Beautifully.
we,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, no, please stop me if I need to listen. I'd like to hear what you said.
Oh no, no. I was just sort of distilling some of the points that you made. I mean, one thing that's fascinating to me is you sort of like arrived at a business model that took account not only of, say, the profits of business, but also the people involved in the area. And you say you love conservation and you use coffee basically as your wedge or as your vehicle. Uh,
Yes.
but what you did was you were able to offset a lot of that degradation of the landscape by offering something else. As you said, that people want actually to live more traditionally, close to the land, maintain their traditions and their environment, but they didn't really have any kind of viable, with foreign entity coming and beginning mining, they didn't really have any power. Are you, it's also reinvigorating agriculture, the farmers, and so basically you have an, a sort of environment where business, ecotourism,
Hmm.
the product, all of it finally has converged in a work. You help foster that.
Yeah, Ed, it does. And this is again why it's so fascinating. And I know we could go on and talk about Papua New Guinea and birds and orchids and all that stuff forever, but we'll have to have some more series on that another time.
Can I ask you how were you alerted to the plight of the gorillas? And I think you mentioned John's friend approached you because
Yeah.
he was really sensitive to that issue and wanted your help. Knew you had expertise, or at least experience. So how did that transition come about, and how did you get involved with Uganda?
Yeah. So again, it does come back to how coffee connects us all of us,
Mhm.
meeting there together. And John's book, just like when you read it and you were coming down to speak there, and it has kept us connected. After Papua New Guinea, um, certain events happened. And let's just say that at the end of a wonderful 7-year or 8-year commitment to that community, there was some greed and corruption that resulted basically in an assassination attempt on my life and John's life. And pretty much, that destroyed the business model, destroyed the business benefits to the communities, and kind of left me very sour about coffee and whether or not I wanted to be visionary and passionate about coffee.
Right.
But John wrote the book, and there was an article written in the Grosse Pointe News, and that article was picked up by a friend of his who then went and purchased the book, a friend who he'd gone to school with but hadn't seen for nearly 40 years. After he read it, he was stunned that someone from Grosse Pointe, where everything is so functional, orderly, and wonderfully organized,
Yes.
could have transited to Papua New Guinea and lived this way where there was so much chaos and still make it all work. So he called us up and he said, I really love coffee and I love gorillas. And what I have found is that Uganda actually has some really amazingly wonderful coffee. And he said, can we meet on up and somehow or other you find if there's a way that we can do something with coffee in Uganda? So
Mhm.
that brought me on my research. And what I did then was that I met up with Steve and talked about everything, found out that, like a lot of people, his heart was moved by the creatures of the land and the potential to conserve it.
He's
What
got a
I,
good name.
yeah, and what I
Kind of
found
cool.
out though
Can't
as
believe what we
well, yeah, was that besides the people, besides the gorillas, he actually wanted to know more about the people as well. Initially, the plan was, let's just find an area where there's some coffee growers and talk to them about how we can improve their packaging. But I got it more into the heart and soul of this
Mhm.
other gentleman, Steve. Must be some good Steves in the world. And found out or asked him what was it that really was going to move him or was motivating him. And it was a genuine desire to actually help people, to
Mhm.
see if there was a way that we could make a difference. So I said, well, you aren't going to make a difference if you just sort of go into a huge organization and say, change this and that. If you really want to make a difference, particularly in a habitat where it's sensitive to people and sensitive to the creatures, you need to go in and find a smaller group of people that are living in the land, connected with it,
Mhm.
find out what it is that they want and to help them maintain sort of stewardship of their land and help them to be and stay connected to that. So I did some research and found a wonderful group of people in the Kisoro Highlands of Uganda, in southwest Uganda. And that led me to go and visit them with Steve. And part of that visit is in a video, which we're going to share with you in the next minute. That brought me to the Gorilla Highlands Coffee, to Rugaya, Claudine, Maria, and the team, and to the wonderful people that we now want to introduce you to with a very quick video. So can we do that, Steve, and sort of show people
Wonderful.
a little bit about how we moved from Papua New Guinea into this wonderful place called Uganda, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how it is that people can also get a connection similar to the coffee experience we did.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh,
Beautiful to
beautiful.
hang out with gorillas,
Oh my gosh.
and we were within like 10 meters or something of them, 30 feet, 40 feet. We got very close, as you'll see here with this one.
That is fabulous.
Yeah,
It looks so
this
much like
guy.
people.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I feel like they should start talking.
Yeah. You feel like that you're in their
Yeah.
majestic presence,
Yeah.
it's like they're engaging with you. Look at this guy, Rafiki.
Wow.
Oh, what a face. What and look at your face. How
Yeah. Look,
excited you are, Fiona.
oh,
Wow.
both Claudine and I, we look, and this is my favorite shot. Look at that. He's looking at us and we're looking at him. Yeah.
That is wonderful. So,
Yeah.
so Claudine was your guide there. I mean, you could not have done that just on your own. You had to go with guides who were recognizable. The gorillas were familiar with, correct?
Absolutely. And, you know, just to give you some idea of what happens when you go trekking, you're only allowed to be there for 1 hour with any gorilla family, because within an hour or so, they actually get tired of human contact. And that's what it's all about. You go into their place and you engage with them, but only for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
And Claudine is part of Gorilla Highlands Coffee. She's our head of women in coffee. And there's Rugaya,
Wonderful.
who's
Wonderful.
the director and founder of Gorilla Highlands Coffee.
I think it'd be a good idea to go right into the coffee shop.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, from the jungle to the coffee shop. I mean, this is what Fiona does. And
I think
the
that's a
energy
great
is
idea.
palpable.
So
I had the good fortune to be involved with a Zoom call last weekend, and I met these people, and it gave me so much good energy. It was a beautiful thing. You don't mind, you can cut me off if you want.
Fiona, where
I think it's great. I think you should definitely
Where
get
is-
it,
I mean-
because it shows people, not just us sitting here and talking in Detroit and in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but, you know, take it
Okay.
right there to Uganda and what it's all about. And it's all about actually coffee, connecting communities and creating changes. So from having, before we do the video, from having a low income of coffee, you can actually now have a value added coffee all the way in a coffee shop right there in Kisoro. So let's meet the team in Kisoro.
You're still seeing this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we started in 2015.
We aren't seeing it yet. You got to share it.
Oh,
It was membership of farmers.
I'm sorry. All right, let's see.
We are here in the highlands. We are enjoying coffee.
Winnie, hello. Nice to see you again.
We're gonna try this one again.
Nice to see you.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Hi.
Fantastic.
This is Rudaya Richmond. Say hi, everyone. Hi.
We are here in the highlands. We are enjoying coffee.
Winnie, hello. Hello. See you again. Nice to see you again.
Maria is here. Patience.
Hi.
Say hi to Kaori.
Hi, Kaori.
Yeah, we started in 2015. We started an association which was growing coffee. It was membership of farmers. Then the brand started in 2017. The brand buys from us, distributes, and the money goes down to the communities. They help them to improve their incomes.
During your daily life, do you encounter gorillas?
Quite often.
Quite often.
Sometimes they come to eat our Irish potato. So when people do they chase them away. Some leave them. But the practice is changing. They are now becoming friendly to them because they benefit from them through tourism, through coffee activities. So we are friendly. We are now friends.
I'm just excited that I'm able to be involved with you, and that I'm even on this Zoom call with you.
Thank you for your
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are very touched.
It feels much better buying coffee that has a benefit, and that I can see your face, and I can know that if I'm selling your coffee or if I'm buying your coffee, I'm helping you and the people I just met in your community and the gorillas that you cohabitate with. It's very rewarding to me. It feels better.
That's what it takes. It takes people like
Okay.
you to help us spread the word. So thank you.
This is our coffee shop, as seen from outside. So we're excited. He loves our coffee, and we're inviting him to Uganda.
Sounds great.
We've got to all go. We're all gonna go.
I'd love to meet face to face.
It's been nice.
Great.
Bye, Fiona.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Regina.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
We'll be revisiting the QR codes later.
Wonderful.
I just want to pass it over to Ed.
Oh,
It's
that is
great for me seeing the people.
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and the people. What it,
Well, that's it. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that is what it's all about. You know, when you can drink your cup of coffee during the day
That's what it's all about.
and know that you're helping not just coffee farmers get great prices, but you're helping gorillas because you're sustaining the livelihoods, sustaining the habitats rather of the gorillas. You know, that's what it's about. So basically, you know, today was sharing a little bit about it and sharing a little about the videos, and that's about it. I guess.
I mean, we should show them a walk through the coffee grove, to the coffee field, to the coffee plants.
I love it. You know, I mean, I love walking through coffee plants and the vibrancy of it. They're beautiful plants. And, you know, when you get to visit next year, you will enjoy just the smell of coffee, walking through it, the richness of the land. And that's where you get to understand about the harmony of the land, you know, staying.
Now, I assume
in
Ed's going to come with me, right?
Yeah. Well, I will. And the gorilla tracking will be available. Coffee will be there. Let's see. Yes, this is, there it is. There's Kisoro. There's one of our farmers' gardens right there.
I'm so glad I met Ugaya.
That is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Very healthy. It was fantastic.
That is, you know, Fiona, one of my favorite quotes that John gives in his book Taubata, right?
Mhm.
Talking about, you know, his story and how he meshes with you, and I love that romantic story about how you met and everything like that. But he has a quote that seems to be, I think, just like what we're talking about right now. He says, I send faith in things unseen. And I think that he kept to that, and you helped keep him on that. And together, it was because of that unseen but quiet path that brought
Yeah.
you to Africa, and what you've done here, and how you've brought these people together and expanded, you know, kind of like what they had started. But you strengthen the biology of that whole region, and ensured its sustainability, and the gorillas too, uh, and for the tourism, and to be able to go and have the coffee. One thing I want to know, just very, very simply, if I were to go there and to be able to see the gorillas, how far would I have to travel though to get down to the cafe?
Ah,
How far is it, or is the settlement right there? Because the height of the mountains, I know, and I know Steve knows this area too. Around Asheville, North Carolina, and the Blue Ridge Mountains, you go up, different kind of environment there. It's very cool.
yes.
It can be misty and the whole thing. How far is it to get down to the cafe where you can enjoy the coffee, and you can see the people in the town?
Uh, it's to get anywhere for the gorilla tracking, you do have to usually overnight at the lodges because they're based right at the edge of the forest. So like where we are in Kisoro, it's a 3-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive up to the lodge we stayed at, the Clouds Lodge. And then you wake up fairly early, like 7 in the morning, 7:30, have your quick coffee right there, our coffee. And then you track, and you have to track for maybe sometimes 2 or 3 hours through the forest with the Uganda Wildlife Rangers. So you go and you get a briefing with them, then you actually get taken on the walk. Sometimes 95% of the time you will see gorillas. Sometimes you don't, because they have to find the gorillas before people go there. So they're sort of communicating and telling you where the gorillas
Right.
are. Then you walk there, and you spend your 1 hour with the gorillas, and then you have to walk back for another 3 or 4 hours to get back, and then overnight. So You will see the coffee shop and you will go to the towns, but usually that's a separate day again. You know, to get anywhere into tracking gorillas, you actually have to go and
Okay.
overnight. Although, having said that, gorillas will sometimes come off those ranges and go into people's gardens, like Rugaya was saying. But generally speaking, as a visitor, you know, you have to make the effort and go on out and spend the night there. Yeah. But
It's incredible.
yeah, the coffee shop and all of that, you know, the best thing is that you can go and walk the coffee gardens. Then you can go and have a coffee at the coffee shop. So you've seen how it actually grows. You've met farmers that are growing it. And then you come right there to our coffee shop in Kisoro and see that coffee roasted, which is very unusual in any coffee communities because usually they export it as a commodity. A lot of them have never even tasted their own coffee,
Right.
a lot of them. So, you know, to be able to do that and then to top it all off with a visit to the gorillas is just the best. I am getting passionate about Uganda and Gorilla Highlands coffee because both of them are beautiful. The coffee tastes great and the gorillas are majestic. And I
Oh,
get a
they
little
are.
emotional
They
there.
are.
Yeah, I just have to share that I'm emotional because that wonderful gorilla that we were in the presence of, Claudine and myself, Rafiki, he is the
Yes.
one that got killed this year by encroachment into the gorilla habitat for someone that was hungry. They killed that majestic creature. And every time I see that photo and the videos of us in his presence, I'm still stunned that it's because of the poverty and it's because of the lack of, you know, options that people have there that they're resorting to this. So part of why I'm passionate is to say, hey guys, can we make that difference and support some wonderful group of people over there and enjoy the coffee, knowing that we're sustaining and helping with nutrition projects. That means they have more food. That means that they don't have to go and encroach. It also means if they get more money, they don't have to go and cut down the trees for firewood, which is another way that they're going to encroach and impact and possibly injure and kill other gorillas.
I have to interrupt and
So
say
it's
that
all of that, and it's yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry to interrupt,
It's
but
knowing that you've got all the ways to help and support them. But yes, okay, Steve. I think we've gone over our time, so please talk to us.
well, I just want to mention that the QR code on the screen you can put in your mobile phone's viewfinder. If you have a smartphone, it'll have a pop-up menu and you touch that with your finger and you go to the donation site. So you can directly donate to the foundation where all the proceeds go to the gorillas. If you put this QR code in your smartphone's viewfinder, and we will post that as many places as I can think of. So you can do that right now. I also have a QR code that'll take you to the coffee order page, and a portion of all the proceeds of the sales of the coffee go to the foundation and to the cause. And I love the fact that when I drink coffee every day, you know, a portion of what I'm doing is going to the gorillas. So it makes me feel good about my morning cup.
Me too. I love it. So
I,
thank you.
I think it's contagious.
Absolutely.
Now that's a good
And the coffee
contagion.
is absolutely delicious.
Coffee is
You know,
contagious.
I've had it.
Yeah.
Ed, I just wanted to put up the coffee QR code. It's just like the restaurants, the touchless menus. Put that in your mobile phone's
Well, this has
viewfinder.
been absolutely
Right to the
wonderful.
page.
And
You went
you got
out
it.
for
There
a
it
minute,
is.
Ed. I'm sorry.
Fantastic.
No, I heard no audio.
That's great. And it is
Take
Giving
it away.
Tuesday. You know, what a great way to end it, you know, with Giving Tuesday, and to be able to do that, and to, you know, just the simple act of enjoying an absolutely fantastic cup of coffee, which Gorilla Highlands is because I've had it, and to be able to help that environment, to help the gorillas and the coffee farmers,
Yeah.
I think is absolutely wonderful. And the fact that you were able to tie that together, you and John, Fiona, I think is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Steve, for letting us share our story, you know, with people that both love coffee, love communities, love connections. That's what it's all about. I look forward to spending more time sharing more stories and exploring it more, and taking some of you over to Uganda one of these days when
Well,
things
Oh
are.
my God, that'd be
I have
wonderful.
to say that I'm just so pleased to be with you. And I have to, well, I want to say that I'm the exclusive host of Ed Hoffman, Speaking of Art podcasts. I think we have a great guest for your show right here, Ed. You could even get John on there. I don't know if you have already, maybe you have, but I started posting those on my site. These are the relationships that I've made that I value. Ed has some fascinating guests, just like Fiona. Speaking of Art podcasts on my site. My site is pfa2.com. PFA2, P like Pierce, F like financial, A like Ann, and the number 2.com. That's like Ann Arbor, but I couldn't do a superscript for the A2, how they abbreviate Ann Arbor. But it's been a pleasure. I feel like the content that we have here is just so valuable. Just seeing the pictures and the videos from Uganda are so precious to me. And if we can help by getting donations to the foundation, and we're establishing a monthly coffee club where you'll get coffee delivered to your doorstep. You contact Fiona today and you can get coffee delivered to your doorstep. So
Yes.
I don't know, I put the QR code up. I'm not sharing anymore. You can go to my website, pfa2.com/gorillas, and there are clickable links both to the foundation and to the coffee. There's also pfa2.com, Ed Hoffman, Speaking of Art, Ed Hoffman, Speaking of Art, where you'll find all his podcasts, including the most recent podcast, Sam Cutler, manager of the Rolling Stones, legendary figure in the rock and roll business. And Ed had exclusive interview with him. I have exclusive hosting opportunities for all of his podcasts. And to bring it back here today, our goal, I think all three of our goal is to make an impact, put positive energy out into the world, and make an impact on people. And hopefully we can all do that sitting around and drinking this fine coffee. Ed, Fiona?
Beautifully said, Steve. Beautifully said. Thank you.
Remember, pfa2.com/gorillas. You can donate and you can buy the coffee. You'll go right to the site. If you want to listen to Ed's podcasts, pfa2.com/Ed Hoffman, Speaking of Art. Fiona?
And this little guy just wants to say thank you as well. And see you all in Uganda. So bye
It's
from
an honor
us.
for me to have both of you on the show and to even be part of this.
Yes, okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks for being here. We'll
Okay.
talk soon.
bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Oh, my pleasure, Steve. Thank you. And thank you, Fiona. And thank you, Karen, for tuning in, and our other listeners, other guests too. What a wonderful, wonderful experience. It's been wonderful. I feel like now I know you, Fiona and John, through Steve. And what a lovely thing. Thank you. And to be involved in this with your endeavor with coffee. This is wonderful. Thank you very much.
Everybody have a great day and a great holiday season. This coffee makes the perfect gift.
It does.
Absolutely. Yes, it does.
As
I
they
mean,
say,
thinking of
goodbye
that.
and good
Yes.
luck.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.